Khotan was a Buddhist country, and then the Buddha decided to move. So there was a movement of all Buddhas and Buddhist teachers from the original country of Buddhist to Khotan.
So Erika, it's great to see you here in Kashgar.
Yeah, I'm also excited to see you here in Kashgar.
Yes, after so many years.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that for the past 3 years, you've been at the Jimbunken in Kyoto. And what is it that you work on now?
I moved to Jimbunken, Kyoto University, with a focus on Central Asia, but especially I'm continuing what I did in the past years, which is about the oasis of Khotan along the Silk Road. So the time period is the first millennium, and during this period Khotan was a thriving Buddhist kingdom. So, it is a place where you have documents. So many people pass by Khotan, and you have documents of something that the Chinese have written about. Then you have documents in the language of Khotan, which was unknown before archaeological excavation there at the beginning of the 20th century. You have also the Tibetans were there, and so it's like a center where a lot was happening. But we have archaeologically it is a bit difficult to put together all the pieces, and so I see myself as reconstructing a puzzle using whatever material I can find to see how like the Buddhist culture developed in that oasis, and what was really the connection of Buddhist became like a common language in Central Asia at a certain point, and this was used also for diplomatic relationship with China, with Dunhuang, with other neighboring countries.
And you say like 1,000 years there, the first millennium. That's a long span of time.
It is a long span. But let's say I focus more on the last part. So, what is it? So, Buddhism was already there in the 3rd century. We have Chinese sources on that, but they say like maybe it started to expand in the oasis at the turn of the millennium, but we don't have clear dated documents before the 3rd century, and the majority between the 5th and then the 9th, 10th century. After the 10th century, Khotan started to be Islamized slowly. So it's difficult because we don't have clear dates. So I'm looking at Buddhist temples, so art historical material and archaeological material, and this is difficult to date precisely. You have to, so maybe this is part of the fun. You have to compare with stuff from India for iconography, or things from China, or things also from the area of Gandhara. So there was a lot of like circulation of Buddhist manuscript, Buddhist sutra, circulation of people related to this Buddhist traffic, which was of course linked also to the trade traffic.
So what you do, would you define it more as art history or archaeology or maybe history? Are you a historian? Are you a textual scholar?
I'm not a textual scholar. I was trained as an archaeologist. So my dream would be like have an excavation in Khotan, but so far it didn't happen. I don't lose my hope. Which means since I don't have an excavation, I excavate in what has been found. So I read research from textual people. So I read research from historical research, and I try to see from the archaeological reports all the new what to see like how the archaeological panorama fits with expansion of Buddhism there. And of course I look at art historical material, but more I'm interested in the content of the painting. So recently I've been fascinated by the fact that we have, it's sort of like in the literature there is this propaganda that Khotan was a Buddhist country, and then the Buddha decided to move. So there was a movement of all Buddhas and Buddhist statues from the original country of Buddhism to Khotan, just to say like they prefer to stay here. And so there are legends also how Buddhist monasteries have been founded, and these are linked to some miracles, and they always involve the royals or some king of Khotan or the princess of Khotan. And of course the story is built in a way that shows that also the royal establishment was chosen, Buddhistically chosen to develop this country, to develop as a peaceful Buddhist kingdom. And then these stories are represented in paintings, some of them. So my question is like, why they represent this story within the temple? So of course it's something about like the founding of a monastery, but then the story per se doesn't. So in the depiction there are no Buddhas or Bodhisattva, just the protagonist of the story. And it's more than looking at the iconography of the painting. I would like to know why people choose to depict this thing, and what is the background behind. And since when you find a legend of a founding of a monastery depicted in places that are different from the original location of a monastery, then the question is like it's a clear reference to the original monastery. So my idea, which is difficult to prove, but I mean I try to follow some path, is that maybe these stories were like a logo or a propaganda or a poster that wanted to highlight the affiliation to the main monastery. So maybe it is a hint about a sort of like a network of monasteries that were spread all over the country that depended from a central monastery, and this would fit with the idea that Buddhism was very much supported by the royal establishment, or where you find some deities that are really difficult to decipher, because Khotanese iconography is not fixed in a way you imagine with Chinese Buddhism or Japanese Buddhism or even with Indian iconography. So it's really a puzzle still. The excavated material that is still extant is not so rich, and sometimes I work only on old photographs, so which is the only evidence of a certain painting. Of course the ruins are long gone, and still is like, okay, but what is this deed? It doesn't look, it looks a little bit like this Indian one, but there is no real description on how this deity should look like. So you have very often names in the text, and then pictures, and it's like, okay, can I match these two things? Yeah, so okay. I don't know, maybe it's not but fun is fun.
Yeah. I'm very interested in this idea of working with different sources from different places. So you're not looking at Khotan. Well, Khotan is part of China today, right?
Yeah.
And we can look at it through Chinese sources, what they wrote about them, about Khotan, and then construct some sort of history. But it's I think it's really interesting to leave behind this textual or linguistically based one-sided perspective and then involve basically everything around it. So you also look at Indian stuff, Gandharan stuff, right? To kind of connect all this together.
Yes.
Yeah.
And recently, because toward the end of the first, so let's say like 9th, 10th century, Khotan became very close with another important oasis, which is Dunhuang. And we have caves, paintings that display this relationship. So this is, it's very well known. We have the portrait of the Khotan king in one of the caves, and we have also this protector deities that were important for state protection in Khotan. There are 2 or 3 themes that really say in Dunhuang, refer very strongly to Khotan in Dunhuang. And so they maybe this there was a Khotanese community there, and they were sponsors. So the decoration of this cave was sponsored by the resident Khotanese community, or traveling Khotanese community, and in Dunhuang is. I would say everything becomes so available because we have clear iconography, and you have the names, the dates, with something that you don't find in Khotanese painting. So I started to look at Dunhuang to understand the reality of Khotan. So now I'm going in this direction. So the last period of Buddhism in Khotan, which is better represented also textually in Dunhuang rather than in Khotan.
Yeah, and now there are not really sites like that in Khotan, right? Yotkan is really not much to look at today.
So what remains is this is also interesting. There are clusters of Buddhist sites that are really far away from what has been considered the capital of the kingdom. So there are some people even venture in saying maybe that was not the capital. Maybe the capital was moved eastwards. I think it's really it depends on what has been left archaeologically. So around the capital and other sites, the archaeological strata was completely gone. So by people who were living there. So maybe in other parts, which now maybe once they were green oasis, and now it's desert, so that the ruins are kept better than around the sites of the capital. But also. It shows the flourishing of certain centers and the changing of trade routes in certain periods as well. So they become, how to say, the idea is also in China, they didn't have only one capital. So maybe they had probably other secondary capital or secondary political centers, and then the monastery were clustering around these other functional political centers.
Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah. So the Uyghurs and the Mongols, they all had several capitals, right? The northern one, southern one, summer capital.
I cannot prove, but it's if you look at the map of the sites, you do find very, very important manuscript place where you found important evidence of Buddhism in Khotan. They come from these clusters that are far away, but they are along the route to China. There were Chinese colonies, communities there. So,
okay. Wow, very interesting. And you just brought up one thing that it's kind of not directly related, but you mentioned that some of these sites, they survive in the desert. And people always assume that it's the desert climate that preserves them. But what you just said now is actually that the desert climate makes it inhospitable for people to live there.
Exactly.
And that preserves it. Not the climate, but people not living there is what preserves the sites.
Yeah. I mean, they did also. Orelstein describes is that people were using the wood, so they were recycling the material. So
Yeah.
So very often it's really like the people who inhabit it, they continue to use the land. So and in the way they like, so they dig to find more for agriculture. So this continue to how you say this, like to dig in another way, not for archaeology, but for living purposes. And
yeah, it's very interesting that you would not recycle maybe, but use the material that's very old.
Yeah.
Like you would have plates of stone in your home that are like 1,000 years old.
Yes.
You construct your home out of them. Like you see that in Egypt and other places, of course.
Yeah. Also in ancient Rome.
In Rome,
also in Rome, modern Rome. So you find buildings that they just recycle some marble from, and they put it in the wall to build up the wall. The climate, so the wood is very well preserved in this area, so and it's dry and it's strong, so people would use old wood
Very good. All right, so I don't want to keep you because we need to get breakfast.
Yes.
So it was great to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.